For thousands of years, the Orion Galactic Assembly stood as the most powerful political force in known space. Its influence stretched across millions of star systems. Its fleets guarded the major hyperspace corridors. Its laws governed hundreds of intelligent civilizations. And whenever disputes emerged between member species, the Assembly always had the final word. At least that was what everyone believed. Humanity had joined the Assembly barely 80 years earlier. Compared to ancient races like the Valkyrie, the Therax, and the Elysians, humans were considered newcomers. Young, ambitious, unpredictable, dangerous. Many Assembly leaders viewed humanity with suspicion, not because humans were weak, but because they were advancing too quickly. In less than a century, Earth had transformed from a regional power into one of the galaxy's fastest-growing industrial civilizations. Human shipyards produced warships faster than almost anyone else. Human scientists constantly developed new technologies. Human colonies expanded into frontier sectors other species avoided. And perhaps most concerning of all, humans refused to think like everyone else. Where older races accepted limitations, humans challenged them. Where others followed tradition, humans experimented. Where others feared failure, humans treated it as another lesson. To many Assembly politicians, that mindset was becoming a threat. The tensions finally exploded in the year 2784. It started in the Outer Rim, a region known as the Archon Frontier, rich in rare resources, strategically important, and claimed by multiple civilizations. For decades, the area remained largely uninhabited. Until humanity arrived. Human corporations established mining settlements, research facilities, terraforming stations. Everything was legal according to Assembly regulations. First, then the Valkyrie Dominion changed the rules. The Valkyrie were one of the oldest species in the Assembly, powerful, arrogant, and accustomed to getting what they wanted. When surveys revealed enormous quantities of quantum crystal beneath Archon worlds, Valkyrie leaders suddenly declared the region part of their historic territory. Human officials immediately protested. Assembly courts became flooded with legal challenges. Months turned into years. The dispute grew worse. Neither side backed down. Then came the incident that changed everything. A Valkyrie military patrol entered the Epsilon Archon system. Officially, they were conducting inspections. Unofficially, they were trying to intimidate human colonists. The confrontation escalated. Shots were fired. When the smoke cleared, 3 Valkyrie cruisers had been destroyed, and hundreds of soldiers were dead. Across the galaxy, news networks exploded. The Valkyrie demanded justice. Humanity claimed self-defense. The Assembly called emergency sessions. For 6 straight weeks, debates consumed the capital world of Helios Prime. Every major government sent representatives. Every news channel covered the crisis. Every citizen feared war. Then the Assembly announced its decision. The ruling shocked humanity. The Assembly declared that Earth was solely responsible for the conflict. All human settlements in the Archon frontier were ordered evacuated. Their mining rights were revoked. Their economic licenses cancelled. And Earth was required to pay enormous reparations to the Valkyrie Dominion. The punishment was devastating. Human diplomats protested immediately. They presented evidence, censor recordings, military reports, witness testimony. The Assembly ignored everything. The verdict had already been decided. Earth's ambassador stood before the Assembly Council and issued a warning. If justice no longer matters, then peace will not survive. Many council members laughed. They saw humanity as isolated, outnumbered, powerless. 3 weeks later, the Assembly delivered its final ultimatum. Earth had 30 days to comply. If humanity refused, all member states would enforce sanctions, trade blockades, military restrictions, and if necessary, war. Across human space, anger spread like wildfire. Citizens filled city streets. Governors demanded action. Military commanders quietly prepared contingency plans. But no one expected what happened next. Because deep within the unexplored regions beyond known space, A fleet was already moving. A fleet so vast that entire civilizations had dismissed its existence as myth. A force hidden in darkness for generations. A force waiting for the exact moment humanity would need it. And as the assembly celebrated its ultimatum, thousands of black warships emerged from hyperspace. The Black Armada had entered the war. The announcement of the assembly's ultimatum spread across the galaxy within hours. Every major news network carried the story. Every government issued statements. Every military command increased readiness levels. Most civilizations believed the outcome was already decided. Humanity would surrender. After all, no species had ever successfully challenged the Orion Galactic Assembly. Not once in over 3,000 years. The Assembly controlled thousands of member worlds, millions of warships, countless economic systems. Against such power, resistance seemed impossible. That was exactly what the Assembly wanted everyone to believe. On Helios Prime, council members celebrated privately. The Valkyrie Dominion was already discussing how to divide the Archon Frontier's resources. Corporate executives anticipated enormous profits. Military officials expected a quick operation. The entire political establishment assumed humanity had reached the end of its rise. But far beyond the Assembly's borders, something ancient was awakening. Deep within a region known only in forgotten star charts as the Shadow Expanse, enormous structures drifted between dead stars. The area had long been avoided. Navigation systems malfunctioned there. Long-range scanners produced strange readings. Exploration missions often vanished without explanation. Most civilizations considered the region cursed. The truth was far more frightening. It wasn't empty. It was hidden. And for over 2 centuries, someone had been preparing there. Inside a massive command fortress orbiting a black dwarf star, thousands of officers stood at attention. The chamber itself was enormous, large enough to contain an entire city. Holographic maps filled the darkness. Fleet movements appeared as glowing symbols across countless sectors. At the center stood an elderly woman wearing a black military uniform. Her name was Admiral Sophia Kane. To the rest of the galaxy, she had died 170 years ago. Official records listed her flagship as destroyed during a classified deep space expedition. The Assembly believed she was long dead. Humanity had allowed them to believe it. Sophia studied the latest intelligence reports in silence. Finally, one of her officers approached. "The ultimatum has been confirmed, Admiral." The room became silent. Everyone already knew what that meant. For decades, contingency plans had existed. Protocols created for a single purpose: the survival of humanity. Sophia slowly nodded. "Then the waiting is over." The officer hesitated. "Authorization code?" Sophia looked toward the massive star map. Her voice remained calm. "Black protocol. Full activation." For a moment nothing happened. Then every holographic display turned crimson. Across thousands of hidden shipyards, alarms activated. Dormant fleets awakened. Encrypted communication networks came alive. Generations of preparation suddenly transformed into action. The Black Armada was mobilizing. Most humans living inside Assembly territory knew nothing about it. Even many governments had never seen the complete plans. The project had begun after humanity's first contact wars. Back then, several older civilizations had attempted to control Earth's expansion. Human leaders learned an important lesson. The galaxy respected strength. Without it, treaties meant nothing. Promises meant nothing. Justice meant nothing. So a secret decision had been made. Humanity would build an insurance policy. Not for conquest, for survival. Over 2 centuries, hidden colonies were established beyond known space. Entire industrial worlds disappeared from public records. Scientists developed technologies in complete secrecy. Shipyards produced vessels larger than anything officially acknowledged. Every generation added to the project. Every crisis reinforced its importance. And eventually, the Black Armada was born. Now it was finally being revealed. Within days, strange reports began appearing throughout frontier regions. Merchant captains reported seeing enormous fleets emerging from unexplored sectors. Listening posts detected hyperspace signatures unlike anything on record. Long-range telescopes captured images of black warships stretching beyond visual range. At first, governments dismissed the reports. Then the evidence became impossible to ignore. One assembly reconnaissance squadron disappeared while investigating the sightings. Another returned with terrifying sensor data. The report reached Helios Prime immediately. Council members gathered in emergency session. As the data appeared on the central display, the room fell silent. Thousands of warships, thousands more support vessels, mobile shipyards, carrier groups, planetary assault formations. The numbers kept growing. One counselor finally broke the silence. "Who are they?" An intelligence officer swallowed nervously. "We believe they are human." The room erupted into chaos. That answer made no sense. Humanity officially possessed only a fraction of that strength. Yet every analysis reached the same conclusion. The fleet was human, built by humans, commanded by humans, and moving toward assembly space. For the first time since issuing the ultimatum, fear entered the hearts of the assembly's leaders, because they were beginning to realize a terrifying possibility. Humanity had not spent 80 years becoming powerful. Humanity had spent 2 centuries preparing for this exact moment. And the Black Armada was only the beginning. The revelation of the Black Armada sent shockwaves through the Orion Galactic Assembly. For centuries, the Assembly had enjoyed unquestioned dominance. Its fleets patrolled the major hyperspace routes. Its laws shaped the destiny of entire civilizations. Its military power was considered unmatched. Now, for the first time in generations, that confidence was beginning to crack. Emergency sessions continued day and night on Helios Prime. Council chambers that normally echoed with political arguments were now filled with fear. Military analysts worked around the clock. Intelligence officers examined every piece of data. Yet no one could answer the most important question. How had humanity hidden a fleet this large? Every new report made the mystery worse. Long-range sensors tracked thousands of black warships emerging from unexplored regions. Supply convoys followed them. Mobile shipyards accompanied them. Entire battle groups appeared where no fleets should have existed. The numbers simply didn't make sense. Meanwhile, inside human space, the mood had changed completely. Only days earlier, many citizens feared economic collapse and war. Now hope was spreading. Rumors about the Black Armada raced through planetary networks. People spoke about hidden fleets, secret colonies, ancient contingency plans. Most of the stories sounded unbelievable. Yet the evidence was impossible to ignore. Something enormous was happening, and humanity was no longer standing alone. On Earth, President Marcus Hale met with military leaders beneath the Geneva Strategic Complex. The underground command center buzzed with activity. Holographic displays tracked fleet movements across dozens of sectors. Advisors hurried between stations. Officers monitored communications from every corner of human territory. At the center of the room stood a live transmission from Admiral Sophia Kane. The legendary commander appeared calm despite the growing crisis. President Hale studied her carefully. "Status report." Sophia answered immediately. "The Armada has completed Phase 1 deployment." A massive map appeared behind her. Red symbols spread across frontier regions. Entire sectors were highlighted. "Assembly forces are concentrating near Archon," she continued. "They expect us to defend our colonies." The president frowned. "And our response?" A faint smile appeared on Sophia's face. "We're not defending." Several officials exchanged confused looks. Sophia pointed toward the map. "The Assembly believes this war is about territory." New fleet markers appeared. Hundreds of them. Then thousands. "They're wrong." The room became silent. "This war is about leverage." At that exact moment, events were already unfolding across Assembly territory. Near the Carthus Corridor, one of the galaxy's most important trade routes, civilian traffic suddenly stopped. Cargo vessels reported unidentified ships emerging from hyperspace. Black ships, thousands of them. The vessels positioned themselves with remarkable precision. No weapons were fired. No communications were issued. Yet the message was obvious. The route was closed. Within hours, similar reports arrived from other sectors. Trade lanes, resource hubs, refueling stations, major logistics corridors. One after another, strategic locations fell under Black Armada control. The operation was flawless. No worlds were attacked. No civilians harmed. But commerce throughout the assembly began slowing dramatically. Panic spread through financial markets. Governments demanded explanations. Military commanders scrambled fleets toward the affected regions. And then the first battle began. The Valkyrie Dominion, furious at the disruption, dispatched the 7th Stellar Fleet. It was one of their most respected formations. Over 400 advanced warships, veteran crews, experienced commanders. The Valkyrie believed they would quickly remove the intruders. Instead, they entered history. The confrontation occurred near the Narrows Junction, a strategic gateway connecting 6 major hyperspace routes. When the Valkyrie fleet arrived, they found nearly 200 Black Armada vessels waiting. At first, Valkyrie commanders were relieved. They outnumbered the enemy 2-1. Victory seemed certain. The Valkyrie flagship transmitted a final warning. Unidentified human vessels. Withdraw immediately or be destroyed. No response came. The silence unnerved them. Minutes later, the attack began. Valkyrie cruisers opened fire. Brilliant streams of plasma crossed the darkness. The first Black Armada ships appeared directly in the line of fire. Then something impossible happened. The plasma blasts vanished. Not deflected. Not absorbed. Gone. As though space itself had swallowed them. Shock spread through the Valkyrie formation. Before commanders could react, the black ships moved. Sensors struggled to track them. One moment they occupied one position. The next they appeared somewhere else entirely. Advanced stealth systems? Experimental drives? No one knew. The effect was devastating. Black Armada destroyers struck the Valkyrie flanks with surgical precision. Communication arrays disappeared. Shield generators failed. Weapon systems went offline. Entire ships became helpless within seconds. Still, the Black Armada avoided lethal force whenever possible. Warships were disabled. Not destroyed. Crews were spared. Escape pods were untouched. The battle lasted less than 20 minutes. When it ended, the once proud 7th Stellar Fleet drifted powerless through space. Over 400 Valkyrie ships had been neutralized. The Black Armada lost only 3 vessels. The news spread across the galaxy like wildfire. People stared at the reports in disbelief. Military experts called it impossible. Politicians demanded verification. Citizens wondered whether the balance of power had changed forever. Inside the Assembly Council, fear turned into something much worse. Realization. They had expected a rebellious member state. Instead, they had awakened a force capable of challenging the entire galactic order. And as alarming as that victory was, Admiral Sophia Kane knew a secret no one else did. The fleets currently visible represented less than 1/3 of the Black Armada's true strength. The real war had not even started. The destruction of the myth surrounding assembly invincibility happened in less than 20 minutes. That was all it took. 20 minutes for the mighty Valkyrie 7th Stellar Fleet to be reduced from a symbol of power into a field of drifting, disabled warships. 20 minutes for centuries of political certainty to begin collapsing. And 20 minutes for fear to spread across the galaxy. News of the battle at Narrows Junction traveled faster than any military fleet. Every major media network interrupted regular programming. Civilian communication channels exploded with speculation. Experts argued. Politicians issued statements. Citizens watched the footage over and over. The recordings showed the same impossible scene. Valkyrie weapons striking empty space. Black warships moving faster than targeting systems could track. Entire enemy formations losing power almost instantly. The footage looked fake. But it wasn't. For the first time in living memory, the assembly had been humiliated in open space. On Helios Prime, emergency alarms echoed through government districts. The Assembly Council reconvened immediately. The atmosphere was completely different from the confidence displayed during the ultimatum. Only weeks earlier, council members had spoken about forcing humanity into obedience. Now those same leaders sat in uneasy silence. At the center of the chamber, Supreme Chancellor Varen studied the latest intelligence reports. His expression grew darker with every update. How many confirmed sightings? The intelligence director swallowed nervously. 372, Chancellor. The chamber erupted. What? That's impossible. They can't be everywhere at once. The director activated a holographic map. Gasps filled the room. Black Armada fleets appeared across dozens of sectors. Major trade routes, industrial systems, strategic jump gates, fuel depots, communication relays. The Armada wasn't attacking randomly. It was positioning itself around the Assembly's most important infrastructure, like a giant hand quietly wrapping around the galaxy's throat. One council member looked horrified. They're preparing for total war. The director shook his head. That's the strange part. Everyone looked at him. No civilian targets have been attacked. The room fell silent. No colonies destroyed. No orbital bombardments. No massacres. Every military engagement has been defensive. That made the situation even more disturbing, because it meant humanity wasn't acting out of rage. This was planned. Carefully. Methodically. Every movement served a purpose. Every fleet deployment followed a larger strategy. And nobody outside the Black Armada understood that strategy. Meanwhile, deep within the shadow expanse, Admiral Sophia Kane watched events unfold from her command fortress. Massive holographic displays filled the chamber. Fleet reports streamed continuously. Officers moved between command stations. Yet despite the growing tension throughout the galaxy, Sophia remained calm. An aide approached her. Admiral, Assembly forces are mobilizing in unprecedented numbers. Sophia nodded. Expected. Current estimates suggest over 12,000 warships are moving toward frontier sectors. Several younger officers looked concerned. 12,000 warships represented one of the largest military mobilizations in Assembly history. But Sophia didn't seem worried. Instead, she asked a different question. How many have accepted our offer? The aide checked another display. 27 governments so far. A faint smile appeared on Sophia's face. The officers exchanged confused looks. Most military commanders focused on fleets. Sophia focused on politics. Because while the Assembly prepared for war, something else was happening. Smaller member civilizations were beginning to ask dangerous questions. Why had humanity been punished despite evidence supporting its claims? Why had the Valkyrie received favorable treatment? Why had Assembly courts ignored witness reports? And perhaps most importantly, what if humanity was right? Across dozens of star nations, public opinion was shifting. Citizens protested Assembly decisions. Political leaders demanded independent investigations. Some governments even suspended military cooperation agreements. The unity of the Assembly was beginning to fracture, exactly as Sophia had predicted. For generations, powerful species like the Valkyrie had dominated galactic politics. Smaller civilizations tolerated it because resistance seemed impossible. Now the impossible had become reality. Someone was finally standing up to them, and many were secretly cheering. Then came another shock. A classified Assembly database was hacked. Within hours, millions of confidential documents appeared across public networks. Corruption records, secret negotiations, bribery agreements, manipulated court rulings. Evidence that powerful governments had influenced Assembly decisions for centuries. The reaction was explosive. Riots erupted on multiple worlds. Governors resigned. Investigations began. Trust in the Assembly collapsed overnight. Inside the council chamber, panic spread. Who leaked this? Was it humanity? Was it the Armada? No one knew. But the damage was catastrophic. The Assembly was fighting two wars simultaneously. one against the Black Armada, and another against its own citizens. Then an urgent transmission arrived. A military officer rushed into the chamber. His face had gone pale. "Chancellor." The room became silent. "What is it?" Varen demanded. The officer hesitated. Then he spoke. "Long-range sensors have detected another Black Armada fleet entering assembly territory." Several council members groaned. Another fleet wasn't surprising anymore. But then the officer continued. "This fleet is larger than all previously observed formations combined." The chamber froze. "How large?" someone whispered. The officer looked at the report. Even he seemed unable to believe the numbers. "Approximately 9,000 capital-class warships." Silence. Absolute silence. Many leaders simply stared at him. Others looked physically ill, because everyone understood what that number meant. The fleets humanity had revealed so far had only been the advance force. The true heart of the Black Armada was finally arriving, and it was heading directly toward the galactic core. The report spread through the assembly faster than panic itself. 9,000 capital-class warships. Not destroyers. Not escorts. Not support vessels. Capital ships. The largest and most powerful warships ever built. The kind of vessels capable of conquering entire star systems. The kind of vessels that normally took decades to construct. And according to sensor reports, the Black Armada possessed thousands of them. The implications were terrifying. For centuries, military analysts had believed no civilization could secretly build such a force. The resources alone would have been impossible to hide. The industrial capacity required would have been visible across hundreds of sectors. Yet humanity had done exactly that. Somehow, somewhere, for generations. Inside the Assembly Council chamber, Supreme Chancellor Varen stood before a giant holographic display. The image showed the advancing Armada, a black tide moving steadily toward the galactic core. Every projection produced the same conclusion. If the fleet continued unopposed, it could reach the central sectors within weeks. And once there, the balance of power would change forever. "We need every available fleet," Varen ordered. "Recall reserve forces. Activate defense networks. Mobilize planetary garrisons." Military officers hurried to obey. Throughout assembly space, emergency orders were transmitted. Warships left their docks. Defense platforms powered up. Shipyards shifted entirely to military production. The largest mobilization in assembly history had begun. But while politicians prepared for war, ordinary citizens were asking a different question. Why? Why had the assembly pushed humanity this far? Public trust was collapsing daily. The leaked documents continued spreading across communication networks. Every hour revealed new corruption, new favoritism, new abuses of power. Citizens who once viewed the assembly as a force for stability now saw something very different. A system controlled by ancient elites protecting their own interests. Protests grew larger. Entire worlds demanded reforms. Some governments openly refused assembly directives. Others threatened secession. The political foundation of the galaxy was beginning to crack. And Admiral Sophia Kane knew exactly where to apply pressure. Inside her command fortress, officers monitored developments across hundreds of systems. Fleet movements, economic indicators, political unrest. Everything flowed into the central command network. One officer approached Sophia. "Admiral, several member states are requesting direct communication." Sophia looked up. "Which ones?" The officer listed names. More than 30 governments. Many were small civilizations. Others controlled important trade routes. A few had once been loyal assembly allies. Sophia smiled slightly. "The fractures are spreading faster than expected." A younger commander frowned. "Shouldn't we focus on military targets?" Sophia turned toward him. "Winning battles doesn't win wars." The room became quiet. Empires fall when people stop believing in them. The young officer nodded slowly. Only now was he beginning to understand the larger strategy. The Black Armada wasn't trying to destroy the assembly. It was exposing it, showing the galaxy what lay beneath centuries of political propaganda. And the results were proving devastating. Then a new transmission arrived. Priority Level 1. Sophia accepted immediately. The image of President Marcus Hale appeared. Unlike most political leaders, Hale looked calm, focused, determined. "The Assembly has responded," he said. Sophia nodded. "We expected that." A tactical map appeared between them. Massive assembly fleets were converging near the Draxus Corridor, one of the most strategically important regions in the galaxy. The route connected the outer sectors to the galactic core. Any force moving toward central space would eventually pass through it. The Assembly intended to make it stand there. President Hale studied the map. Estimated enemy strength? 17,000 warships. Several nearby officers exchanged uneasy glances. Even for the Black Armada, that was a serious threat. The Assembly had gathered fleets from hundreds of member worlds. Some formations were centuries old. Others represented elite military units. Together they formed the largest armada ever assembled. President Hale finally asked the question everyone was thinking. "Can we break through?" Sophia looked directly into the camera. Her answer came without hesitation. "Yes." Not confidence. Certainty. The president nodded. "Then proceed." The transmission ended. Across the command center, officers immediately returned to work. Orders spread through encrypted channels. Fleet formations adjusted course. Supply lines accelerated. The Black Armada prepared for its most important battle. Far ahead, near the Draxus Corridor, assembly commanders were doing the same. Thousands of warships formed defensive lines. Heavy weapons platforms protected key hyperspace exits. Carrier groups launched fighter wings by the tens of thousands. The scale was beyond imagination. Entire star systems seemed crowded with warships. Military observers from neutral civilizations gathered to watch. News organizations deployed recording vessels. Everyone knew history was about to be made. Then, 3 days later, the Black Armada arrived. Sensors detected them first. A massive wave emerging from hyperspace. Black ships stretching farther than scanners could measure. Countless formations advancing in perfect coordination. And at the center of it all, a vessel unlike anything ever seen before. It dwarfed every known battleship. Its dark hull extended for nearly 50 kilometers. Its engines glowed with strange blue energy. Ancient symbols covered its armored surface. The moment it appeared, every sensor network in the sector focused on it. Assembly commanders stared in disbelief. "What is that thing?" No one answered, because no one knew. Deep inside the colossal vessel, Admiral Sophia Kane stood on the bridge. She gazed at the endless enemy fleet waiting ahead. 17,000 warships. The strongest military force the Assembly could assemble. A force designed to stop humanity forever. Sophia's expression never changed. She simply gave one order. Advance. Moments later, the largest space battle in galactic history began. The moment the Black Armada crossed into the Draxus Corridor, the galaxy changed forever. Space itself seemed to tense. Every sensor grid in the region locked onto the approaching formation. 17,000 assembly warships formed a vast defensive wall stretching across multiple jump lanes. It was not just a fleet. It was a fortress in space. Carrier groups positioned at the rear. Battleship lines at the front. Interceptor wings circling like predators. Defense stations anchored along key hyperspace exits. The entire corridor had been turned into a kill zone. And waiting at the center of it all was Supreme Fleet Marshal Kaler of the Valkyrie Dominion. A commander who had never lost a battle. A strategist who had studied every known form of warfare. A leader who believed numbers and firepower would always decide the outcome. He stared at the incoming Black Armada formation, then spoke quietly. Target their center. Break their formation before they adapt. Across the fleet, orders spread instantly. Weapons powered up. Targeting systems locked. And then the galaxy witnessed something that should not have been possible. The Assembly struck first. A wave of energy weapons erupted across space. Plasma lances, graviton cannons, quantum disruptors. Entire sections of space lit up like artificial suns. The Black Armada was swallowed in fire. For a moment, silence followed. Then alarms began screaming across assembly ships. Target still active. No structural damage detected. That's impossible. As the energy cleared, the black ships were still there. Undamaged. Unmoved. Almost as if the attack had never happened. On multiple command decks, officers stared at the readings in disbelief. "How is their shielding holding that?" one shouted. Another officer shook his head. "It's not shielding. The energy is vanishing before impact." At that exact moment, the Black Armada responded. But not like anything the galaxy had ever seen. There was no massive volley. No dramatic explosion. Instead, small groups of black ships simply disappeared and reappeared inside assembly formation gaps, right behind the defensive line, inside carrier clusters, between battleship formations. Chaos erupted instantly. Enemy inside the perimeter. How did they protect the carriers? But it was already too late. Black Armada strike teams moved with surgical precision. They didn't destroy entire ships. They disabled them. Power grids collapsed. Weapon systems shut down. Navigation cores went silent. Command structures froze. Entire formations of assembly ships suddenly drifted helplessly, cut off from coordination. Marshal Kaler's eyes narrowed. "They're not fighting us," he muttered. "They're dismantling us." And that was exactly what was happening. The Black Armada wasn't engaging in traditional warfare. It was conducting a system-wide neutralization. Every strike removed command capability. Every maneuver disrupted coordination. Every insertion created confusion across entire fleet sectors. Within minutes, the carefully constructed assembly wall began to fracture. Still, the assembly had numbers, and they used them. Hundreds of warships converged on the intruding Black Armada units. Weapons fired at point-blank range. Some hits finally connected. A Black Armada frigate flickered under sustained fire, then exploded. For the first time, a cheer rose across assembly channels. "We can kill them." But that moment didn't last, because the Black Armada adapted. Instantly, the next wave of attacks avoided concentrated fire zones entirely. They moved faster, struck harder, and targeted command ships. Within 15 minutes, 3 assembly fleet coordinators were destroyed. Communication networks began breaking down. Orders arrived too late or not at all. Confusion spread faster than damage. Marshal Kaler realized something terrifying. They were losing control of the battlefield. Not because they were outgunned, but because they were being outthought. Across the battlefield, Admiral Sophia Kane watched everything unfold. Her command ship floated at the center of the Black Armada formation. She studied the collapsing assembly coordination with cold precision. An officer approached. "Admiral, enemy resistance is stronger than predicted." Sophia didn't look away from the holographic display. "Not stronger," she said. "Just larger." Another officer spoke urgently. "They're adapting to our insertion patterns." Sophia nodded slightly. "Good." That single word confused several nearby commanders. Good? They were in the middle of the largest space battle in history, and the enemy was adapting. But Sophia understood something they didn't. Adaptation meant learning, and learning meant predictability. She raised her hand. "Begin Phase 2. Across the Black Armada, new signals activated. Previously inactive vessels came online. Hidden formations emerged from sensor blind spots. Specialized ships advanced toward key assembly command clusters. And then the true purpose of the Armada began to reveal itself. Because the battle at Draxus Corridor was never about destroying the assembly fleet. It was about breaking its spine. Marshal Kaler finally saw it. On his tactical display, multiple command nodes began going dark. Not frontline ships, not fighters. Command hubs, fleet coordination centers, relay stations, strategic AI cores. "They're decapitating us," he whispered. At that moment, a massive shockwave ripped through the battlefield. A black Armada capital ship, previously held back, entered the center of the corridor. Its arrival disrupted every remaining formation. Its presence alone jammed half the assembly's targeting systems. And on its bridge, Admiral Sophia Kane gave her final order for the phase. End the structure. The Black Armada moved as one. And the assembly defensive line finally began to collapse. Not with a single explosion, but with silence. The silence of systems shutting down. The silence of fleets losing coordination. The silence of an empire realizing it was no longer in control of the battlefield. And in that silence, the fate of the galaxy began to shift. The silence after the first wave of disruption was worse than the battle itself. On every assembly command ship, officers stared at failing systems. Tactical displays froze mid-update. Fleet links dropped one after another. Communication channels filled with static and half-finished transmissions. The once perfect coordination of 17,000 warships was breaking apart in real time. Marshal Kaler gripped the edge of his command console. "What is happening to my fleet?" he demanded. An officer nearby checked diagnostics. "Command relays are failing across multiple sectors." Another voice cut in, panicked. "It's not random. Look at the pattern." On the main holographic display, clusters of disabled ships appeared like spreading fractures in glass. Not evenly distributed. Targeted. Precise. The Black Armada wasn't just attacking ships. It was dismantling the entire command architecture. Far beyond the battlefield, in orbiting relay stations and deep space coordination hubs, systems were going dark. Fleet-wide synchronization collapsed. Orders from Central Command arrived late or not at all. And in modern warfare, that was equivalent to losing the battle. On the Black Armada side, everything remained perfectly coordinated. Admiral Sophia Kane observed the battlefield like a surgeon watching a living organism fail. Her voice was calm. "Enemy coordination efficiency?" A data analyst responded immediately. "Down to 23% and dropping." Sophia nodded. "Continue pressure on relay nodes." The analyst hesitated. "Admiral, we're receiving resistance from 3 Valkyrie battle groups converging on our forward insertion units." Sophia finally looked up. "Let them come." At that exact moment, the Valkyrie battle groups struck. 3 elite formations. Fast attack cruisers. Heavy destroyer escorts. Veteran crews trained for surgical strikes. Their goal was simple: eliminate the Black Armada units disrupting their command network. They moved with speed and precision, cutting through the battlefield chaos. For a brief moment, it looked like they might succeed. Their weapons locked onto a cluster of Black Armada ships near a broken relay station. Firing solutions calculated. Trigger sequences initiated. And then, the Black Armada vanished. Not destroyed, not evaded. Vanished. The Valkyrie fleet passed through empty space. Confusion spread instantly. Where did they go? Scan the area. Target reacquire. But there was nothing to reacquire. The Black Armada had reappeared behind them. Inside their formation. At point-blank range. What followed was not a battle. It was a dismantling. Valkyrie shields collapsed under sudden internal strikes. Weapon systems were disabled before they could rotate. Entire cruisers lost power simultaneously. Panic spread through their formation like fire through dry fuel. Marshal Kaler watched the engagement unfold, his expression hardening. "They're using spatial displacement inside combat clusters," he muttered. "That level of precision shouldn't be possible." But it was happening anyway. And worse, his entire fleet was starting to fracture. Reports flooded in from all sectors. "Command ship lost. Fleet Group Omega-7 is unresponsive. Signal degradation across outer wings. Enemy insertion detected in carrier zone." Every few seconds, another part of the assembly formation collapsed. The Draxus corridor, once a solid wall of military power, was turning into scattered islands of isolated ships. And isolated ships could not win a war. Meanwhile, deep inside the command fortress of the Black Armada, Sophia received another update. A senior strategist approached her. "Admiral, Assembly formations are beginning to fragment into independent clusters. Sophia nodded. Expected. The strategist frowned. They still outnumber us significantly. Numbers don't matter when coordination is gone, she replied. She turned toward the holographic battlefield. What matters is control. On the display, entire sections of the assembly fleet were now fighting blind. No central commands. No synchronized strategy. Just isolated commanders making desperate decisions. Some tried to regroup. Others attempted retreat. A few continued fighting blindly into empty space. The great assembly armada was no longer one force. It was thousands of broken pieces. Marshal Kaler finally activated a galaxy-wide emergency broadcast. His voice echoed across surviving assembly channels. All fleets, fall back to secondary formation lines. Regroup at designated convergence points. Do not engage independently. But even as he spoke, he knew it was too late, because many ships never received the order, and those that did no longer had the structure to follow it. Then came the final blow of Phase 2. A massive energy pulse erupted from the Black Armada's central capital ship. It spread outward silently. No explosion, no visible shockwave, just a ripple through spacetime itself. Every remaining assembly coordination grid in the corridor flickered, then shut down. Instantly, entire fleets went dark. Not destroyed, not disabled, disconnected. And in modern warfare, disconnection was death. Marshal Kaler stood frozen as his command systems died one by one. His final link to Central Command vanished. He was no longer a fleet commander. He was just a man on a dying ship, surrounded by silence. Across the battlefield, Sophia watched the result. The corridor was now fully under Black Armada control. But there was no celebration, only confirmation. She spoke quietly. Phase 2 complete. A pause. Then the next order. Prepare Phase 3. Because the war was not over. It was only changing shape. And the assembly had not yet faced the final truth. The Black Armada was not here to fight their fleet. It was here to end their control over the galaxy itself. The Draxus corridor had fallen silent. Not the silence of peace. The silence of a system that had stopped working. Across thousands of drifting warships, lights flickered without purpose. Engines ran idle. Weapons powered down. Command bridges filled with confused officers staring at dead displays. The Assembly's greatest defensive armada, 17,000 warships, was no longer a coordinated force. It was debris held together by momentum and confusion. Marshal Kaler stood on his bridge, staring at the dead tactical screen. For the first time in his entire career, he had no orders, no updates, no connection to higher command. Only fragments of broken fleets scattered across the corridor. His second-in-command approached slowly. "Marshal, we've lost central coordination." Kaler didn't respond immediately. He already knew. He could feel it in the silence. In warfare, silence meant one thing. Defeat was complete. Not physically, not yet, but structurally. The assembly fleet had lost what made it dangerous. Unity. Meanwhile, deep in the Black Armada formation, Admiral Sophia Kane observed the battlefield transformation with clinical precision. The holographic map showed thousands of isolated assembly clusters, some attempting regrouping, some retreating, some still firing blindly into space, but none coordinated. Sophia spoke calmly. "Begin Phase 3 deployment." Across the Armada, a new movement began. Unlike previous phases, there was no sudden aggression, no explosive engagement. Instead, ships repositioned, formations widened, gaps opened intentionally, and then something unexpected happened. The Black Armada stopped advancing. On every surviving assembly channel, observers noticed the same thing. The black ships had paused. Marshal Kaler frowned. "Why are they stopping?" No one answered, because no one understood. At first, some assembly commanders thought it was a retreat. Others believed it was regrouping. A few assumed it was hesitation. But Sophia knew exactly what she was doing. Phase 3 was not about destruction. It was about exposure. Within minutes, encrypted transmissions began broadcasting across the battlefield. Not to military channels, to civilian networks, to planetary governments, to independent systems still watching the war unfold. Every transmission carried the same data packet, and when decoded, it revealed something devastating. Hundreds of pages of classified assembly records, corruption logs, court manipulation evidence, military interference directives, trade suppression orders. Entire star systems had been economically crippled not by war, but by political design. Governments that opposed dominant powers had been systematically undermined. Legal cases had been quietly rewritten. Witness testimony had been removed. Entire conflicts had been staged or prolonged for political gain. On dozens of worlds, citizens watched in disbelief. What is this? They lied to us. This can't be real. But it was. And it was only the beginning. More transmissions followed. This time, they included intercepted Assembly Council communications, private discussions, strategic planning sessions, conversations where civilian lives were treated as bargaining tools. One particularly damning recording played across thousands of systems. We cannot allow humanity to set a precedent. If they succeed, other species will question our authority. Then we make sure they do not succeed. Silence followed the recording. A different kind of silence. Not battlefield silence, but political silence. The silence of realization. Across the assembly, something irreversible began to happen. Public trust collapsed completely. On member worlds, protests turned into uprisings. Governors were removed. Local governments declared independence. Military garrisons refused assembly orders. Entire sectors began breaking away in real time. And the assembly, already weakened militarily, now faced something far more dangerous. Internal collapse. Marshal Kaler received reports from his fractured fleet. Not tactical updates, political ones. Sector Helion has declared non-cooperation. Trade routes in the Viral system have been shut down. 3 member governments have suspended assembly authority. Kaler slowly lowered his head. They were losing everything. Not just the battle, the system. Meanwhile, Admiral Sophia Kane watched the unraveling unfold across her display. One of her officers finally asked the question everyone had been avoiding. Admiral, was this always the plan? Sophia didn't answer immediately. Her eyes remained on the collapsing map of assembly control. Then she spoke quietly. Yes. A pause. This war was never about defeating their fleet. She gestured toward the spreading fractures across the galaxy. It was about breaking their monopoly on truth. The officer frowned. Truth. Sophia's expression hardened slightly. The assembly didn't just control space. It controlled perception. Who was guilty? Who was punished? Who was ignored? She turned away from the display. And that kind of power only survives as long as people believe it is legitimate. Across the battlefield, the Black Armada remained motionless, waiting, observing, not striking, because the real damage was already happening. The assembly fleet in the Draxus corridor was no longer the primary battlefield. It was irrelevant now. The real war had moved everywhere else. Into governments, into economies, into belief itself. Marshal Kaler finally understood. This isn't a war, he whispered. This is a replacement. And for the first time, the Valkyrie Dominion and the Orion Assembly realized something horrifying. They were not losing control of the battlefield. They were losing control of the galaxy. And the Black Armada had not even begun its final phase. The assembly did not collapse the way empires usually collapse. There was no single catastrophic defeat. No final battle that ended everything in one moment. Instead, it unraveled. Quietly, system by system, world by world. The Draxus corridor, once the most heavily fortified region in the galaxy, now floated like a graveyard of warships and broken coordination grids. 17,000 vessels still existed there. But without command structure, they were nothing more than isolated islands of steel. Some tried to regroup. Others drifted into unknown space. A few simply powered down and awaited instructions that would never arrive. Marshal Kaler stood on his command bridge, staring at the dim remains of his fleet. No alarms, no tactical updates, no orders, just silence. Then came the final message from Central Assembly Space. A single encrypted broadcast. Short, cold, official. Emergency directive. All fleets are to fall back to core defense perimeter immediately. Kaler read it twice, then closed his eyes. Fall back. To where? There was no coordinated fallback anymore. No unified command. No guarantee of safe passage. The assembly was not retreating. It was dissolving. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the Black Armada had entered Phase 3 fully. But it was not advancing like before. It was doing something far more unsettling. It was spreading influence. Not through conquest, through exposure. Every major core world began receiving identical transmissions. Governments, corporations, civilian networks, even independent colonies. All receiving the same message packets. And each one contained something different. Evidence tailored to that specific world. On industrial hubs, it revealed economic manipulation. On military worlds, secret treaty violations. On political centers, bribery networks and covert influence operations. On border systems, falsified threat assessments that justified decades of militarization. It was not random. It was precise. And it was devastating. On the core world of Helios Prime, the political heart of the Assembly, the Senate erupted into chaos. What is this propaganda? These are fabricated. We've been compromised. But others were not so sure anymore. Because too much of it matched internal inconsistencies. Too many records aligned with known discrepancies. Too many sealed archives were suddenly being mirrored in public channels. Trust, once broken, does not repair easily. And the Black Armada was ensuring it never could. On Earth, President Marcus Hale watched the unfolding collapse from the Geneva Strategic Complex. For the first time since the war began, he looked exhausted. Not from battle, from scale. This is bigger than we planned, one advisor admitted quietly. Hale didn't respond immediately. Then he spoke. No. Everyone turned toward him. This is exactly what was planned. Meanwhile, deep within the Black Armada command vessel, Admiral Sophia Kane monitored the final stage of Phase 3. Her officers worked through constant data streams. Reports of government collapses, military defections, civil unrest, economic fragmentation. One officer approached. Admiral, 29 core systems have officially declared independence from Assembly authority. Sophia nodded. Acceleration is within projection. Another officer hesitated. Some systems are requesting direct alignment with human protection protocols. That got her attention. Sophia turned slightly. How many? 18 and increasing. A pause. Then Sophia spoke. Log them. No engagement unless necessary. A junior commander frowned. Admiral, are we becoming their authority now? Sophia's answer was immediate. No. A pause. We are removing theirs. Elsewhere, Marshal Kaler was facing his own final realization. His fleet was no longer part of a war. It was a relic of a system that no longer functioned. Even if he won every remaining engagement, there was nothing left to return to. No unified assembly. No stable command structure. No trust in leadership. Only fractured worlds making independent decisions. And in the middle of it all, a Black Armada that never needed to occupy territory to control it. Because control had already shifted elsewhere. Not through force, but through collapse of legitimacy. Then came the final shock. A transmission from the Valkyrie Dominion's home system. It was not military, not political. It was surrender protocol. Partial withdrawal from assembly authority. Immediate suspension of joint operations. And internal restructuring of governance. Marshal Kaler read it twice. His hands tightened slightly. Even the Valkyrie were pulling back. The most aggressive, dominant military power in the assembly was stepping away from the system it once controlled. Kaler finally spoke, voice low. It's over. His officer hesitated. Marshal. Kaler looked out at the drifting remnants of his fleet. No battles remain worth fighting. Across the galaxy, similar moments were happening everywhere. Commanders resigning, governments fracturing, citizens rejecting authority, systems rewriting their own allegiances. And through it all, the Black Armada remained steady, unmoving, observing, because it was never chasing victory on the battlefield. It was waiting for the galaxy to accept a new reality, a reality where the assembly no longer defined order, and humanity was no longer asking for permission to exist. In the depths of space, Admiral Sophia Kane watched the final collapse indicator stabilize. Then she gave the simplest order yet. Hold position, because Phase 3 was complete, and the galaxy was no longer the same. But the final phase had not yet begun. The silence after the collapse was unlike anything the galaxy had ever known. Not the silence of war, not the silence of victory, but the silence of transition. The Orion Galactic Assembly, once the absolute governing body of known space, no longer functioned as a unified system. Its fleets were scattered. Its command structure was broken. Its political authority was rejected across dozens of core worlds. What remained was fragments, independent governments, defecting systems, military remnants with no central command, and a galaxy trying to understand what it had become. In the Draxus corridor, Marshal Kaler's flagship drifted among thousands of disabled vessels. No one fired anymore. No one advanced. There was nothing left to conquer. Only questions remained. Kaler stood alone on the observation deck. His career, his victories, his entire understanding of order in the galaxy, all of it felt distant now. An officer approached quietly. Marshal, what do we do now? Kaler didn't answer immediately. He looked at the broken expanse of space, then spoke. We wait. For what? Kaler's voice was low. For the galaxy to decide what it wants to be. Meanwhile, deep within the Black Armada command vessel, Admiral Sophia Kane stood before a massive holographic map of the galaxy. It no longer showed a battlefield. It showed a restructuring. Systems marked in different states. Independent, aligned, unstable, under negotiation. Humanity's influence was present, but not absolute. That had always been the intent. President Marcus Hale appeared via secure transmission. The assembly is finished as a governing body, he said. Sophia nodded slightly. Yes. Pause followed. Hale studied the map. And what replaces it? Sophia didn't answer immediately. Instead, she looked at the countless star systems now making their own decisions for the first time in centuries. That is not for us to decide, she said. A long silence. Then she added, we only ensured they could decide at all. On Earth, celebrations had already begun in some regions. Not for conquest, but for survival, for recognition, for the end of external control. But the tone was cautious, because everyone understood something important. This was not peace yet. It was reset. Across the galaxy, former assembly worlds began forming new alliances. Smaller councils, regional coalitions, trade agreements based on mutual benefit rather than enforced authority. Some systems reached out to humanity directly, not as subjects, not as enemies, but as equals. And for the first time in recorded galactic history, that idea was possible. Inside the Black Armada, Admiral Sophia Kane finally initiated the final broadcast. It was transmitted to every surviving system in known space, every military channel, every civilian network, every remaining assembly relay. The message was short, clear, unmistakable. The era of centralized control has ended. No civilization will govern the galaxy alone again. Humanity does not seek dominion. We do not seek tribute. We do not seek obedience. A pause. Then the final line. We only ensure that no one ever imposes it again. The transmission ended. For a long moment, there was no response. Then slowly, across the galaxy, reactions began. Some worlds accepted it immediately. Others debated it. A few resisted it. But none could deny what had already happened. The old order was gone, not replaced by another empire, but by fragmentation, balance, uncertainty, and choice. In the quiet aftermath, Marshal Kaler stood with his remaining officers. For the first time, no one spoke of victory or defeat. Only survival, only adaptation, only what came next. Far away, the Black Armada did not pursue further action. Its fleets began dispersing into deep space regions once considered unreachable. Hidden shipyards returned to silence. Command structures reduced visibility, and humanity stepped back from the edge of galactic control, not as rulers, but as a force that had changed the rules of the galaxy forever. On the bridge of her flagship, Admiral Sophia Kane gave one final order: stand down from active operations. The officers hesitated. Admiral, permanently? She looked at the stars beyond the viewport. Yes. A pause. Then quietly, our work is done here. Outside, the Black Armada slowly faded from active formation status. Not destroyed, not defeated, but withdrawn, because its purpose had never been endless war. It had been the end of a system that no longer worked. And now, the galaxy had something it had not known for millennia: a chance. Not peace enforced by power, but stability chosen by many. And in the vast silence of space, that was enough.